Hey everyone, this is Hurricane Hal with CNC live in Delcambre, Louisiana, tracking Hurricane Delta with your Friday morning update. As of the latest advisory, 7 a.m. Central Time on Friday, maximum sustained winds were 120 miles an hour, making Delta a major hurricane, a Category 3 on the Saffir-Simpson scale. Motion was to the north at 12 miles an hour. That's an average speed for hurricanes in this part of the world. We're expecting the motion to continue to the north and then curve a little bit to the northeast, making landfall a little bit east of Cameron, Louisiana. Unfortunately, in the very similar or same location that Hurricane Laura made landfall back in August. So that's one of the concerns with this, is that the same area is getting hit as Laura hit back in August. We're expecting the winds to die down a little bit and some weakening before landfall for a couple reasons. For one reason, the water temperatures in the northern Gulf are running cooler than normal, generally in the upper 70s, and that's good news. That will weaken hurricanes, and that's pretty common for these October storms. I think back to Lily in 2002, it was a Category 4 offshore, but it weakened to a Category 1 before landfall. Another reason we'll see a little bit of weakening before landfall is increasing southwesterly wind shear. What can we expect for storm surge? The National Hurricane Center is forecasting 7 to 11 feet of storm surge above normally dry ground. That's a little bit less than we saw in Hurricane Laura, and that makes sense because the winds are less intense, and also the extent of hurricane force winds in Laura was 50 miles from the center, and in Delta it's only 35 miles from the center. Still, this will pack a punch and probably make landfall as either a category, probably a Category 2 hurricane, actually, somewhere between 100 and 110 miles an hour on the Saffir-Simpson wind scale when it makes landfall later today. I'm here in Delcambre, Louisiana. You can see a boat behind me. A guy, ship captain named Preston, is going to be staying on the boat. That's pretty common in a lot of these ports, that captains and boating personnel and fishermen like to stay on their vessels and adjust the ropes and keep an eye on things during a hurricane. So we are expecting a pretty big push. To give you an idea of my setting, I'm about 8 miles from Vermilion Bay. Vermilion Bay is east of the track of Hurricane Delta, and we're expecting really the largest storm surge to be somewhere near Vermilion Bay, around 7 to 11 feet above normally dry ground. I wanted to also mention for our friends on the upper Texas coast, High Island and north, we're expecting 2 to 4 feet of storm surge. Really south of there, Houston, Galveston area, about 1 to 3 feet of storm surge. The water levels on the upper Texas coast will be higher on the Gulf side than they will in the bays, like Galveston Bay, for example, because the storm is passing to the east. I wanted to show you what I'm up to here. It's over here, I installed a community flood monitoring system here, and we've just been taking note of the water levels through the night. And so this is a system that I can see how high the water is. The water has come up about 1 foot since about 9 o'clock last night. So a lot of that relates to the high tide. The high tide in Vermilion Bay and Sycamore Point really started falling around 7 a.m., but there's a delay here because I'm about 8 to 10 miles from that location. So we're expecting the tidal levels would have been falling here around 9 or 10 in the morning, but we're expecting them to push in through the day. So how high will water get here where I'm at? I do think that it'll get a couple feet above ground level, and I wanted to turn the camera and show you this high water mark. So I'm here again in Delcambre, Louisiana. There's a kind of a shrimp boat over there, and we have a restaurant bar over here. And I got to know some of the locals, and check this out. There's a high water mark over here from Hurricane Laura. So again, Laura was a Category 4 hurricane, major hurricane that struck the area back in August. And you can see the high water mark here kind of running to the left of that yellow pole there. It's 33 inches above ground level. And so we like to get into these communities, and I do think that the Delta high water mark will be a little bit lower than it was for Laura. But we like to get in these communities, know the flood history, and measure what's going on during the storm. I like to be here really before the storm to help set up equipment and flood monitoring system, and also do accurate forecasting, and then stay during the storm to document what happened, and then obviously stay afterwards to help assess what happened and help people get back on their feet as well. I wanted to share really one last thing that I really saw here on the ground yesterday, driving through areas closer to Lake Charles and areas in southwest Louisiana. You know, typically when I'm on the ground in the upper Texas coast and South Louisiana, I feel like people are about as prepared as they'll be anywhere. These are tough, resilient people that have been through so many storms, and so typically these areas are very well prepared for hurricanes. I saw a lot of debris piles in front of people's houses yesterday. I talked to local people, and some of the locals, even some local officials and people that have prominent positions, said, look, in some of these communities, like smaller communities, you might only have 1 or 2 dump trucks. They pick up a load of debris from a storm like Hurricane Laura, and they take it down to Jennings, Louisiana, and they may wait for 3 hours to get that debris dropped off and processed, because the volume of debris from Hurricane Laura was so great in southwest Louisiana that it could take hours to just dump off one load and come back. So they might only be able to do maybe 2 or 3 loads in an entire day. So it takes months to really clean up the debris from these major hurricanes. And Laura was just 6 weeks ago. So there's a lot of debris on the ground, still piles of debris in front of people's houses where they gutted their houses. They took out what got destroyed by the wind and what got destroyed by the flood. And it's still, sometimes we see plywood and appliances and planks and just, you know, different things out there in front of the house, and that debris can really go airborne once we get Category 1, Category 2 winds. So that's one of the concerns really here when we were on the ground. Also, just driving east of Lake Charles and south of there yesterday, just seeing tons of blue tarps on roofs that were damaged by Laura. So again, Delta's coming in with lower winds than Hurricane Laura did, but how well are these blue tarps going to hold up even if the winds are, say, 70, 80 miles an hour? That's one of the big concerns, that we're still going to see some really extensive damage here from Hurricane Delta, because it's coming in so closely on the heels of Laura back in August. So I'm going to be here in Delcambre, Louisiana. I'm kind of east of Lake Charles, southwest of Lafayette, not that far from New Iberia. Our friends in Sycamore Point are about 10 miles as the crow flies from here. Don Moe and others who record high water marks for many of these storms. I'm here in Delcambre so I can set up a community flood monitoring system and keep track of what's happening here in the ground. Again, this is Hurricane Hal. I'm here in southwest Louisiana, monitoring the impacts and the flood levels of Hurricane Delta. I'll keep in touch with you right here on CNC's social media through the storm. Everyone have a fantastic Friday morning, and I'll touch base with you a little bit later.